So switching gears along the same vein,
Okay.
right? You were sharing with me
yes.
a CNBC story saying
Yep.
Google is reporting that some of the hottest trending searches right now regarding homes is when is the housing market going to crash?
So get this, Tracy. That search has spiked 2,450% in the past month. And it's interesting.
Along with other phrases that are similar, like,
Yeah.
why is the market so hot? And how much over asking price should I offer on my home in 2021? So it's interesting. Those are the spikes on Google searches, which, I completely understand.
Yeah, one of the things that happens, and I know listeners to Kiva get this, is that news media will take something that's a very
non.
Well, no, yeah, but it can be a trigger for people, very emotional. The housing thing. A lot of kids that are not kids now lived through the crash of 2008. Right. And so now they're millennials, right? Now they're getting into that, maybe buying a home or maybe, thinking about buying a home. They lived through that. They watched their parents go through that in 2008. So, I understand the angst that is out there. But what I was saying is Kiva listeners understand that news media will take something and try to create a story where maybe there isn't a story. But obviously there's a story there because people are curious. It's like, how can this market be so hot and when is it going to stop? We know it's going to stop. The question is it going to be just a slow coast to a stop or is it going to be a screeching halt? And my feeling right now is it's going to continue at this pace for a while because there's no signs of anything changing, Tracy. And a couple things just to talk about. So there's three things that we want to keep in mind. And if you don't see these in the stories that are talking about how there's a home bubble building and that the market's going to crash, then they're not telling you the whole story. And there's one other thing, too, that I'll throw in here. But the first one is home price appreciation. Leading up to 2007, Tracy, it was like 10% average over the 4 years leading up to 2007-8. In the last 4 years now, today, it's been closer to 6%. So we haven't had quite the acceleration in home price appreciation that we did back then. The other one, Tracy, you could speak to this. I know you know this really well, is the way lending standards have been now in the last, literally 10, 12 years versus the way they were back then.
Right. The default risk now is so much lower than it was back in the early 2000s, right? When now the products are very careful to make sure that the borrowers can afford the payment, that they have stability, that their credit score shows that they're credit worthy, they're good at paying their bills and being responsible. So the product risk is lower and the borrower risk is lower because the products aren't available that allow people that shouldn't be getting credit.
Those really aggressive, what we call products, meaning loan products like adjustable rate mortgages, right? With the teaser rate that for 1 year it would be 2% and then all of a sudden it jumps up. A couple years later, that got a lot of people in trouble in 2007-8.
Because when it jumped up, they couldn't afford the payment
they couldn't
anymore.
make the payments anymore.
And there are still adjustable rates, but why would somebody do that, Tego, with the rates so low, right? Why not just lock in that low rate for 20 or 30 years?
The other thing you said was borrower risk. And borrower, that's always a tough word, is... again, we know back in the day, Tracy, people were getting mortgages at probably, let's just be honest, they probably shouldn't have been getting mortgages. We know that. That's not happening today. That hasn't happened in the last 12 years. I mean, if you haven't applied for a mortgage in the last 10 years, maybe you did back, in 03, 04, 05, it's different. you have to really prove your income, prove your ability to repay the mortgage. The other thing that's happening is a lot of homes got purchased back in the day as speculation. We're not seeing that today. Most people that are buying homes today are buying homes to live in. The thing that's interesting is a lot of people, in just a side note on that, we're seeing a lot of people that own rental properties, Tracy, that maybe, decided to keep it. They're not really property, investors. They just happen to have the home. They didn't want to sell it. They didn't like the market when they moved, and they've been renting. But we've seen a lot of those people now putting those homes on the market, which is actually hurt our rental market a lot from an inventory level as well.
Right.
Because it's so strong.
Right. They're saying, hey, I'm finally at a place where I feel like I can make some money off that rental property and sell it because it's not my passion.
Yeah.
So we are seeing that for sure. So
the two other things I want to point. The third one is the number of homes for sale. Needless to say, if you've been paying attention at all, there are very few homes actually on the market for sale right now. Very, very low. It's sub 700 homes on the market in the greater Albuquerque area right now. It hit almost 600. I think it's gone up a little bit this week. I'll know on Monday when I get my new stats. I think we might be getting a little bit of buildup, which would be great. But just to put that in perspective, in 2007, when the market tanked, we had about 5,000 homes on the market. We have 700 today.
Which is a huge indicator, Tego, of how quickly the market could slow down or the prices could come down. They just can't when you're at that inventory level.
Well, it's supply demand, right? It's economics 101.
For a market shift, for it to turn downward would take a long time.
Yeah.
Just because we couldn't get 4,000 houses on the market tomorrow.
The fourth thing I wanted to bring up, which wasn't on my list here, but it came to my mind, is important when we're looking at stories about the housing market. Are they talking about the demographic trends? What's happening with the millennial group right now is a big deal. That's a huge population that's moving through these age groups now that are right in their prime home buying age.
Right.
And so you can't stop that. People want to start homes.
People want a home and they want ownership and they want to build their wealth there.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Tego, because again, what we're seeing with that group is they don't want the starter home. They're buying like their second home as their first home.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not going and buying the cheapest home in a neighborhood they can afford. They're waiting until they can afford a home that they're going to want to be in for a long time.
Yep.
And that's part of, their age too, right? They kind of skipped that first home and now they're buying the second home. Interesting.
So the thing I would say to people, if you're, watching the market and you kind of want to see the two things that I'm watching really closely are the number of homes on the market, the inventory level, and I'm watching interest rates. If interest rates get up over 4%, I think that will cause a little bit of a pullback in the market, even though there's still a bunch of people that want homes.
You know what it's going to affect, Tego, is the people who were in that 200,000 price range that were kind of trying to get their first home.
Those homes don't exist in Albuquerque anymore.
Very few, and
Very
a lot
few.
of competition for them.
Yep.
Granted, but those people, if the interest rates go up 1%, that rise in what their monthly payment could price them out of the market.
Yeah.
But 4%, 5% for most borrowers that are buying $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 houses, it's not going to matter. It's for those entry-level people where an extra $20 a month on a mortgage is going to start to push their limit, right?
Yep. I just want to say one thing. If anybody's listening and they're going, well, what about all the forbearance? What about the foreclosure rush that's coming? We don't have time to get into that. My feeling on that, and most of the experts that I'm following and listening to, is there just doesn't appear to be. There isn't going to be this big flood, and I did a couple videos on that already, so I won't go into that. But there just isn't.